They laughed at the maid, raising a baby alone, then discovered who the girl really was. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Pamela's world shatters when she discovers a newborn baby abandoned at the doorstep of the lavish mansion where she works as a housekeeper. The child's desperate cries pierce the cold morning air as rain pours down mercilessly. Without hesitation, Pamela wraps the infant in her shawl and brings her inside, only to find her employers, a wealthy couple, packing for an emergency trip abroad. When they see the child, they agree to contact authorities upon their return. In 2 weeks, until then, Pamela must care for the baby. What begins as a temporary arrangement transforms into a 15-year journey of unconditional love, heartbreaking sacrifices, and unexpected redemption. The vast marble foyer of the Hamilton estate felt unusually cold that morning, as if the mansion itself was holding its breath. Pamela stood frozen, the bundle in her arms squirming and whimpering. The baby couldn't be more than a few days old, tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair plastered to her delicate skull. Outside, the storm that had been battering San Francisco's coast all night continued its assault, raindrops hammering against the stained-glass windows like desperate fingers seeking entry. "Mrs. Hamilton!" Pamela called out, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. "Mr. Hamilton!" The click of expensive heels against marble announced Victoria Hamilton's approach before she appeared, impeccably dressed in a tailored travel suit, her platinum blonde hair swept into a tight chignon. Behind her, Richard Hamilton checked his gold wristwatch impatiently. "Pamela, we're already running late for our flight," Victoria began, irritation lacing her voice. Then her eyes fell on the bundle. "What on earth is that?" "A baby, Mom," Pamela replied, pulling back the edge of her rain-soaked shawl to reveal the infant's face. "Someone left her on the doorstep. There was no note, nothing, just this child." Richard stepped forward, his tall frame casting a shadow over Pamela. At 58, his once dark hair had silvered at the temples, adding to his distinguished appearance. "This is unfortunate timing. We need to leave immediately for Zurich. The company's European branch is facing a crisis that requires our personal attention." Victoria approached cautiously, as if the baby might bite. "We should call the authorities. The roads to the city are flooded from the storm," Pamela said. "I tried calling, but the lines are down." Victoria exchanged a glance with her husband. "We can't miss this flight, Richard. Millions are at stake." "We'll handle it when we return," Richard decided. "It should only be 2 weeks. Pamela can care for the child until then." Pamela looked down at the infant, who had quieted in her arms, tiny fingers curled around the edge of the shawl. At 50, Pamela had long ago buried her dreams of motherhood, a sacrifice made on the altar of survival after the illness in her youth. Her hands, weathered from decades of service, trembled slightly as she adjusted the makeshift blanket. "Of course, sir," she replied, though uncertainty clouded her voice. "I'll look after her." Victoria was already moving toward the door where their chauffeur waited with umbrellas. "The emergency contact numbers are in my study. Use the household account for any necessities the child requires," she called over her shoulder. "We'll sort everything out when we return." And just like that, they were gone, leaving Pamela standing in the massive foyer, rain lashing against the windows, with a newborn baby in her arms and the echo of the closing door reverberating through the empty mansion. "It's just you and me now, little one," she whispered, studying the perfect tiny features. The baby's eyes fluttered open, dark, seemingly endless pools that gazed up with complete trust. Something shifted in Pamela's chest, a door long closed, creaking open. "Don't you worry. I'll take care of you until they come back." But as the days passed and Pamela settled into a routine of feedings, diaper changes and lullabies, she received an international call that would change everything. The Hamiltons' business troubles were worse than anticipated. They would be staying in Europe indefinitely, and had arranged for temporary guardianship papers to be drawn up, making Pamela the baby's legal caretaker until proper authorities could be involved. "I've decided to call her Tina," Pamela told Mrs. Winters, the elderly neighbour who had kindly brought over a box of her own grandchildren's hand-me-downs. "Short for Valentina. She was found on February 14th, after all." Mrs. Winters' wrinkled face creased further with concern. "You're naming her? Pamela, dear, you shouldn't get attached. You're a housekeeper, not a mother. The state will surely place her with a proper family." Pamela's spine stiffened. "And who decides what makes a family proper, Margaret?" The question hung in the air between them, unanswered, but setting the stage for the scrutiny that would follow. Within days, it seemed all of Pacific Heights was buzzing with gossip about the maid who thought she could raise a child. Pamela sat rigid in the hard wooden chair across from the social worker's desk, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. Miss Jenkins, a severe woman with a perpetual frown, flipped through the paperwork with exaggerated sighs. "Miss Donovan, while your temporary guardianship is legally sound for the moment, I have serious concerns about your suitability as a long-term caregiver," she said without looking up. "You're a single woman of advanced age. You live in a property you don't own. Your income is limited. The child deserves a stable two-parent household with financial security." "I have a home for her," Pamela countered, thinking of the garden cottage she'd spent the past week transforming. "I have skills, I have love to give, and I'm willing to work as many jobs as necessary to provide for her." Miss Jenkins finally met her gaze, skepticism evident in her narrowed eyes. "Noble sentiments, but sentiment doesn't feed a child or pay for her education. I'll be scheduling regular inspections. One misstep, Miss Donovan, and we'll be relocating the child to a foster family immediately." And as Pamela left the social services building with Tina sleeping peacefully against her shoulder, she felt the weight of judgment from passers-by. Their whispers followed her like shadows. "Who does she think she is? That poor baby. Someone should do something." But amidst the sea of disapproval, an unexpected ally emerged. Ursula Vincent, the town's most respected former schoolteacher, now in her 80s, stood waiting at the bus stop. Her silver hair gleamed in the afternoon sun, and her eyes, still sharp despite her years, assessed Pamela and the baby with interest. "So you're the one everyone's talking about?" she said without preamble. "May I see her?" Pamela hesitated, then carefully adjusted Tina so that the elder woman could see her face. Ursula studied the baby, then looked up at Pamela with unexpected warmth. "I taught in this community for 53 years, she stated matter-of-factly. "I've seen children raised in mansions with every advantage who grew up hollow and mean, and I've seen children raised in shacks with nothing but love who blossomed into extraordinary human beings." She reached out and patted Pamela's arm. "It's not the size of the house that matters, dear. It's the size of the heart inside it." The next day, Ursula Vincent marched into the social services office and vouched for Pamela's character with such authority that even the formidable Miss Jenkins was momentarily silenced. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it bought them time. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. The garden. Cottage had once been a charming guest house, but years of neglect had left it musty and forgotten. Pamela attacked the restoration with fierce determination, scrubbing every surface, repairing what she could, and finding creative solutions for what she couldn't afford to replace. The Hamiltons had granted her permission to use it, an afterthought, in their distracted communications from abroad. By day, Pamela maintained her duties as estate caretaker, keeping the mansion immaculate in the owner's absence. Before dawn, she worked the morning shift at Millie's bakery, Tina sleeping in a makeshift bassinet in the back room. On weekends, she sold hand-embroidered linens at the farmer's market, a skill her grandmother had taught her, with the baby nestled in a sling across her chest. 3 jobs, endless exhaustion. But when she returned to the cottage each evening, when she held Tina in the rocking chair by the small fireplace and read from her family's collection of folk tales, every sacrifice felt worthwhile. "Once upon a time," she would whisper, even when Tina was too young to understand, there was a lonely woman who found a miracle on her doorstep. The coastal town of San Francisco's outskirts embraced the seasons with timeless traditions. As winter yielded to spring, Pamela bundled Tina in a hand-knitted sweater and took her to the annual Springtide Festival. The locals gathered at the shoreline, casting flower petals into the waves for good fortune. Pamela dipped Tina's tiny feet into the frothy edge of the Pacific Ocean, then sprinkled rose petals on the water. "For your future, little one," she whispered, "may it be as vast and beautiful as the sea itself." The woman beside her, arranging marigolds in her basket, glanced over with a mix of curiosity and lingering judgment. "You're the housekeeper from the Hamilton place, aren't you? The one raising that foundling?" Pamela met her gaze steadily. "Yes, I'm Tina's guardian." "Guardian," the woman repeated, as if testing the word for falsehoods. "Well, it's good of you to bring her to the festival. Children need traditions, roots." She paused, then unexpectedly offered a marigold. "Here, these are for prosperity. She'll need it, coming from, well, wherever she came from." Pamela accepted the flower with dignity and added it to their offering, another small victory in the ongoing battle for acceptance. Summer brought sweltering heat that transformed the cottage into an oven. Pamela soaked cloths in cool water, infused with mint, her grandmother's remedy, and draped them over Tina's crib. During the worst afternoons, they sought refuge beneath the ancient oak tree in the town square, where locals had for generations tied handwritten wishes to the gnarled branches. "What should we wish for, Tina?" Pamela asked, helping the now 8-month-old child sit up against her lap. Tina babbled happily, reaching for the colorful scraps of paper dancing in the breeze. Pamela wrote their wish on a scrap of blue fabric, for Tina to grow strong and loved, and tied it high among the others. As she did, Mrs. Winters appeared with her grandchildren in tow. "Pamela," she acknowledged with a nod that was slightly warmer than months before. Her eyes lingered on Tina, who was attempting to crawl across the blanket. "The child looks healthy." "She is," Pamela affirmed. "She's thriving." Mrs. Winters hesitated, then lowered her voice. "People are saying the authorities will place her soon, that they're processing paperwork for a proper adoption." The words sent ice through Pamela's veins, but she kept her expression neutral. "If that day comes, I'll face it. Until then, every moment is precious." "You should prepare yourself," Mrs. Winters advised, not unkindly. "It's for the best, you know. A child needs—" "I know what people think a child needs," Pamela interrupted softly. "But what Tina needs most right now is consistency and love. I'm providing both." That night, Pamela added another entry to the journal she'd been keeping since Tina's arrival. Each milestone, each challenge, each joy meticulously recorded. If someday Tina was taken from her, at least she would have this record of their time together. At least she would know she had been loved from the very beginning, but mornings still came, and with them, more moments to treasure. Tina's first steps, tottering across the cottage's worn wooden floor. Her first word, "Mama," directed at Pamela without hesitation, cementing a truth both beautiful and terrifying. The way she reached for Pamela's hand instinctively when anything frightened her. The rituals they created together. Sunday afternoon picnics on the cliffs overlooking the ocean, bedtime stories by candlelight during power outages, pressing wildflowers between the pages of books to preserve the memories of their walks. Years passed, and the temporary arrangement stretched on. The Hamiltons' business troubles had apparently evolved into new European ventures, their communications becoming increasingly rare. The social services inspections, initially frequent and rigorous, gradually became perfunctory. Miss Jenkins' frown had softened somewhat, though her report still contained cautionary notes about Pamela's limited resources. When Tina turned 5, a birthday they celebrated with a small cake Pamela had learned to make during her bakery shifts, it was time for her to start school. Pamela walked her to the local elementary, her heart simultaneously swelling with pride and constricting with anxiety. Tina's hand felt so small in hers, her navy blue second-hand dress meticulously pressed, her dark hair braided with blue ribbons. "Remember, be kind to everyone," Pamela advised, kneeling to straighten Tina's collar. "And if anyone asks about your parents, you can say, 'I have you,'" Tina stated simply, with the uncomplicated certainty of childhood. "You're my family?" Pamela blinked back tears. "Yes, sweetheart, always." But the question of Tina's origins couldn't be so easily dismissed in a small town where memory was long and forgiveness came grudgingly. By the end of the first week, Tina came home with questions Pamela had been dreading. "Matteo said I don't have a real family," she reported, her lower lip trembling slightly despite her obvious effort at bravery. "He said I was left on a doorstep like garbage." Pamela's hands stilled in the basin of soapy water. She dried them carefully, buying time to compose her thoughts, then led Tina to their small sofa. "You were never, ever garbage," she said, firmly, cupping Tina's small face between her palms. "You were a gift, the most precious gift I've ever received. We don't know why your birth mother couldn't keep you, but I believe with all my heart that she wanted you to be safe and loved." "But why did she pick the Hamiltons' house? Why not bring me straight to you?" Pamela smiled gently. "Perhaps she didn't know how wonderful I am," she teased, coaxing a small smile from Tina. "Or perhaps she thought a grand house meant a better life for you. Many people think that way." "I don't want a grand house," Tina declared. "I like our cottage." Pamela gathered her close, inhaling the scent of chalk dust and playground sunshine. "In her hair. Then we're perfectly matched, aren't we?" It wasn't long before Tina's teacher, Mr. Bennett, requested a meeting. Pamela arrived early, her uniform from the bakery hastily covered with a cardigan, her hands still faintly scented with cinnamon. "Miss Donovan, I want to discuss Tina's academic performance," he began without preamble. "She's exceptional." Pamela blinked, having prepared herself for concerns or complaints. "Exceptional? Her reading comprehension is at least 3 grade levels above her peers. Her mathematical intuition is remarkable, and her curiosity—" He shook his head, genuine amazement in his expression. "In 20 years of teaching, I've rarely seen a mind like hers." Pride swelled in Pamela's chest, followed swiftly by concern. "That's wonderful, but she needs more than we can provide here," Mr. Bennett continued. "The Westridge Academy has a program for gifted children. They offer scholarships, but even with financial aid, there would be costs for uniforms, supplies, transportation." The familiar weight of inadequacy settled on Pamela's shoulders. No matter how many jobs she worked, how carefully she budgeted, luxuries like private education remained firmly out of reach. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll need to think about it." That night, after Tina was asleep, Pamela opened the small wooden box where she kept her few treasures. Among them was a silver locket, the only item she had from her parents, who had died when she was barely older than Tina was now. Inside was a faded photograph, her mother's gentle smile, her father's proud stance, their hands linked in testament to a love Pamela remembered more as a feeling than as concrete memories. She closed her fingers around the locket, its familiar weight comforting against her palm. It was the one thing she had always promised herself she would never sell, her last tangible connection to her origins. But as she gazed at Tina's sleeping form, peaceful and trusting, the decision crystallized with surprising clarity. The antique dealer's appraisal exceeded her expectations. The locket, it seemed, was crafted by a notable Victorian silversmith, its value far beyond the sentimental worth Pamela had assigned it. The amount would cover Tina's tuition supplement, uniforms, books, and transportation for at least 2 years. "You're certain you want to sell it?" the dealer asked, noting her hesitation as she signed the paperwork. "Family heirlooms like this, once they're gone, I'm certain," Pamela interrupted softly. "It's going to create a different kind of legacy now." Tina thrived at Westridge Academy, her mind blossoming under the challenge of advanced curriculum, but social acceptance proved more elusive. The other children arrived in luxury vehicles, vacationed in exotic locations, and spoke casually of weekend homes and private tennis lessons. "Why can't you ever come to the class picnics?" demanded Vanessa Morris, the self-appointed queen of Tina's grade, after Tina declined yet another invitation. "Is it because you live in that tiny cottage? My mother says your guardian is just a servant." Tina's face burned with shame and anger. "She is not just anything," she retorted, with a fierceness that surprised even herself. "She works harder than anyone I know." "To buy you those second-hand uniforms?" Vanessa sneered, eyeing the faintly visible line where Pamela had expertly let down the hem of Tina's skirt to accommodate a growth spurt. "Everyone knows you're just a charity case. You don't belong here." The words followed Tina home, echoing. With each step of the long bus journey back to the cottage, she arrived to find Pamela embroidering by lamplight, her fingers working with practiced precision despite the long day of labor they'd already endured. "How was your day, sweetheart?" Pamela asked, looking up with a smile that faltered when she saw Tina's expression. "What's wrong?" Tina wanted to confide in her, to pour out the hurt and confusion, but the sight of Pamela's exhausted eyes, the new lines around her mouth, stopped her. How could she add to this woman's burdens? This woman who had sacrificed everything for her. "Nothing," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired from the math test." But as the months passed, Tina's academic excellence became increasingly shadowed by social isolation. She began inventing excuses to stay home, claiming headaches or stomach aches with increasing frequency. One evening, instead of completing her homework, Tina sat at their small kitchen table with an unfamiliar intensity in her young features. "I want to transfer back to the local school," she announced. Pamela set down the mending she'd been working on. "But you love the academy. Your teachers say you're flourishing." "The work is too hard," Tina insisted, not meeting Pamela's eyes. "And it's too far away. I miss being close to home." Pamela studied her carefully. "Tina, has something happened? Are the other children being unkind?" Tina's lower lip trembled before she could control it. "They say I don't belong there, that I'm just a charity case. They make fun of my uniforms and say you're just a servant and—" The words tumbled out now, unstoppable. "And I hate that they're right. I hate that I can't have the things they have. And I hate that you have to work so hard. And I hate that—" She broke off, horrified by her outburst. Pamela moved swiftly to gather Tina into her arms. "Listen to me," she said fiercely. "There is no just about being a housekeeper or a baker or a seamstress. Honest work done with care and pride is never something to be ashamed of. And you belong anywhere your brilliant mind and kind heart can take you. But it's not fair. To you," Tina protested. "I know you sold your locket to pay for my tuition. Mrs. Winters told me it was the only thing you had from your parents." Pamela stilled. "Margaret Winters should mind her own business," she said finally, with uncharacteristic sharpness. Then more gently, "Yes, the locket was precious to me. But you know what's more precious? The future I see for you. A future where doors open instead of close, where opportunities multiply instead of diminish. She took Tina's tear-stained face between her hands. I made that choice gladly, Tina. I would make it again in a heartbeat. That weekend, they baked cookies together, Pamela sharing secrets of perfect sugar crystallization learned from her years at Millie's, and delivered them to Ursula Vincent, whose arthritis had been keeping her homebound. The elderly woman watched them with knowing eyes as Tina described her latest science project with rekindled enthusiasm. "You know," Ursula remarked when Tina stepped outside to admire the garden, "that child has your spirit, Pamela. Not your blood, perhaps, but definitely your backbone." Pamela glanced out the window, where Tina was carefully examining a butterfly that had landed on a rosebush. "Sometimes I worry it's selfish of me to keep her," she confessed in a low voice, "that she deserves more than I can give." Ursula's weathered hand covered Pamela's. "My dear, in all my years of observing children and those who raise them, I've learned that more is rarely what they need. Usually it's enough love, enough stability, enough faith in their capabilities." Her eyes twinkled. "Besides, that girl wouldn't trade you for all the mansions in Pacific Heights, and we both know it. And what will happen in 3 days, when the Hamiltons discover a long-kept secret? Stay tuned to find out if Tina will remain with the only mother she's ever known." 6 years after Tina's arrival, change came with the abruptness of an earthquake. Walter Simmons, the new caretaker hired by the Hamiltons to assist with the now extensive gardens, discovered the cottage and its inhabitants during his first week. His subsequent report to his employers set in motion the events that would test the foundation Pamela and Tina had built together. The Hamiltons returned on a fog-shrouded morning, their chauffeur-driven car gliding up the long driveway with the quiet inevitability of fate. Pamela was supervising Tina's piano practice, a luxury made possible by Ursula Vincent, who had donated her late husband's upright, when the call came from the main house. "They wished to see us both," Pamela explained, her face carefully neutral, as she hung up the ancient rotary phone. "They're curious about the arrangements we've made." Tina, now 11, smoothed down her simple cotton dress nervously. "Will they be angry? Will they make us leave?" "This is their property," Pamela reminded her gently, "but we've kept everything immaculate and you're legally under my guardianship. We've done nothing wrong." The main house felt different, with its owners in residence, alive with a certain energy that had been absent during the years of caretaking. Victoria Hamilton had aged surprisingly little, the subtle work of skilled surgeons evident in her still smooth complexion. Richard's hair had gone completely silver, and he moved with the slight stiffness of a man fighting the indignities of advancing age. "Pamela," Victoria greeted, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "And this must be the child." Her gaze assessed Tina with unexpected interest. "She's lovely. Quite striking." "Thank you, Ma'am," Pamela replied. "This is Tina." "Tina, these are the Hamiltons. They own the estate." Richard Hamilton circled Tina slowly, as if examining a rare specimen. "Mr. Simmons tells us you've been attending Westridge Academy. Your academic record is remarkable." Tina glanced at Pamela, who nodded encouragingly. "I enjoy learning," she answered simply, "especially science and mathematics." "Remarkable indeed," Victoria murmured, "especially considering—" She trailed off, but the implication hung in the air, "especially considering where you came from, who raised you." The Hamiltons led them on a tour of the main house, ostensibly to show Tina the artwork and architecture, but Pamela sensed an underlying purpose to the excursion. Her suspicions were confirmed when they ended in Richard's study, where legal documents were arranged on his mahogany desk. "Pamela, we've been discussing the child's future," Richard began, gesturing for them to sit. "While your arrangement has clearly been adequate thus far, we believe Tina deserves certain advantages moving forward." Victoria nodded. Our European ventures have been extraordinarily successful. We're now in a position to provide Tina with opportunities beyond what your circumstances allow. The best schools in Europe, cultural immersion, social connections that will serve her throughout her life. Pamela's blood turned to ice as understanding dawned. What exactly are you proposing? Richard pushed the documents forward. A generous compensation package for you. In exchange for relinquishing guardianship to us, we would legally adopt Tina and take her with us when we return to Zurich next month. You want to buy her from me? Pamela's voice was barely audible. We prefer to see it as ensuring her future, Victoria corrected smoothly. You've done an admirable job with limited resources, but surely you can see this is what's best for her. The girl is clearly gifted. She deserves every advantage. Tina, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Don't I get a say in this? 3 adult heads turned in surprise, as if they'd forgotten her presence. Of course, dear, Victoria recovered first, but you're only 11. These decisions are best made by adults with your interests at heart. Pamela has my interests at heart, Tina stated firmly, though Pamela could see the slight tremor in her clasped hands. She's my mother in every way that matters. Richard's expression softened slightly. No one is questioning Miss Donovan's dedication, but consider what we're offering. The finest education in Europe, travel, cultural experiences, a life free from financial worries. Time to consider the offer would be appropriate, Victoria added, noting Pamela's pallor. We'll expect your decision by the end of the week. That night, Pamela sat alone at the kitchen table long after. Tina had gone to bed, the Hamiltons' offer spreading before her like a map to an unwelcome destination. The compensation would secure her future. No more pre-dawn bakery shifts, no more weekends at the market. She could finally rest her aching body, perhaps even buy a small place of her own. And Tina would have everything Pamela couldn't provide, the best education, travel, security. Mom! Pamela looked up to find Tina standing in the doorway, her nightgown rumpled, her eyes wide with fear. You're not going to let them take me, are you? The question was a whisper. Oh, sweetheart, Pamela sighed, opening her arms. Tina rushed into them, suddenly seeming much younger than her 11 years. I only want what's best for you. The Hamiltons can give you things. I've never been able to. I don't care about things, Tina interrupted fiercely. I care about you, about us. Pamela stroked her hair. But your education, your future. My future is whatever I make it, Tina declared with surprising conviction. You taught me that. You taught me that worth isn't measured by bank accounts or addresses. She pulled back to look Pamela in the eye. Please don't send me away. Please don't let them buy me like I'm property. Pamela hugged her tightly, her decision crystallizing. Never, she promised, never. But while Pamela slept fitfully that night, Tina lay awake, her young mind processing the day's events with growing dread. The Hamiltons were wealthy, powerful. What if they found a way to take her anyway? What if they convinced the authorities that Pamela was unfit? The fear grew until it became unbearable, driving her from bed in the pre-dawn darkness. By the time Pamela woke, Tina was gone. In her place was a hastily scrawled note. I won't be sold to strangers. Don't worry about me. I love you. Pamela's anguished cry brought Mrs. Winters running from next door. Within hours, the entire community had mobilized. The Hamiltons, to their credit, immediately provided resources for the search, calls to authorities, printed flyers, even a small team of private investigators. Pamela moved through the days in a fog of terror and guilt, retracing their usual paths, checking Tina's favorite spots, the library, the tide pools at the beach, the ancient oak tree in the square. It was Walter Simmons who finally brought the crucial lead on the third day. There's an old fisherman who lives in that cabin on the North Point, he told the search party gathered in the town hall. Name's Henry Miller. Keeps to himself mostly, but I've seen the girl talking to him at the dock sometimes. They seemed friendly. The search party descended on the tiny, weathered cabin jutting precariously from the cliffside. Henry Miller, wizened and suspicious, initially denied everything. But when Pamela stepped forward, her exhaustion and desperation evident in every line of her body, something in the old man's demeanor changed. "She's safe," he conceded gruffly. "Been teaching her to navigate by the stars. Girl's got a mind, like a steel trap. Showed up 3 nights ago saying she needed shelter for a bit. Wouldn't say from what." Relief made Pamela's knees buckle. "Please, I need to see her." Henry hesitated, then nodded toward the back of the cabin. "Out on the deck, been sitting there watching the waves for hours. Reminds me of my daughter at that age, stubborn as a barnacle when she sets her mind to something." Pamela found Tina huddled on a rough wooden bench, a thick blanket around her shoulders, her gaze fixed on the endless horizon where sea met sky. She looked up as Pamela approached, her expression a complex mixture of defiance and uncertainty. "You didn't tell them where to find me," she observed. "Neither did you," Pamela countered gently, settling beside her on the bench. "You knew I'd figure it out eventually. You wanted to be found." Tina's shoulders slumped. "I got scared. I thought maybe you were considering their offer. Maybe you wanted to be free of the burden." "Burden?" Pamela repeated incredulously. "Tina, you are the greatest joy of my life, the greatest gift I've ever received. But all the sacrifices you've made were made freely out of love." Pamela finished firmly. "I never once regretted taking you in, not once." Tina finally turned to fully face her, tears streaming freely now. "I found your journal, the one you've been keeping since the day I arrived. I read parts of it while I was hiding here." She pulled a worn notebook from beneath the blanket. "You wrote down everything, my first steps, my first words, the day I learned to tie my shoes, the time I had that terrible fever, and you stayed up for 3 nights straight." Her voice broke. "You truly love me. Not like a project or a duty, but like I was born to be yours." "Because you were," Pamela said simply, gathering Tina into an embrace that held all the fierce protectiveness she'd carried since that rainy February morning. "Maybe not in the conventional way, but you were always meant to find your way to me." What will Tina's decision reveal about the true meaning of family? Stay tuned for the moment that changes everything. Pamela and Tina returned to face the Hamiltons together, hand in hand, their unity a quiet declaration. Victoria and Richard Hamilton were waiting in the main house's solarium, morning light streaming through the glass ceiling to illuminate their tense figures. "We've made our decision," Pamela announced without preamble. "Tina is staying with me. She's my daughter in every way that matters, and we won't be accepting your offer." Richard Hamilton's jaw tightened, but it was Victoria who spoke first, her voice carefully controlled. "This is about what's best for the child, not your sentimental attachments. Surely you can see that Tina deserves opportunities beyond what you can provide." "With all due respect, Mrs. Hamilton," Pamela replied steadily, "you've known Tina for less than a week. I've raised her for 6 years. I know what she deserves and, more importantly, what she needs." Tina stepped forward, her young face composed, with remarkable dignity. "I appreciate your offer, Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, but my home is with Pamela. She's taught me that wealth isn't measured in money or possessions, but in love and belonging." Victoria's perfectly manicured hand fluttered dismissively. "Charming sentiments, but they won't pay for university or open doors in society." "Maybe not," Tina acknowledged, "but Pamela has taught me that doors can be built where none exist, through hard work and determination. I'd rather learn to build my own doors than walk through ones opened by your money." Richard Hamilton, who had been observing silently, suddenly laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "Well said, young lady. Well said indeed," he turned to his wife. "Victoria, I believe we've underestimated both of them." Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line, but something in her expression shifted as she truly looked at Pamela and Tina, not as a servant and an abandoned child, but as a family united by choice and devotion. "Perhaps," she conceded reluctantly, "but the offer remains open, should circumstances change." "We appreciate that," Pamela said diplomatically, "but our decision is final." What none of them expected was Richard Hamilton's next proposal. "Then, allow us to make a different offer. The cottage is yours, Pamela, legally and permanently, and we'd like to establish an educational trust for Tina. Not as a means to separate you, but as recognition of her potential." Victoria looked startled but didn't contradict him. "Why?" Pamela asked, suspicious of this sudden generosity. Richard's expression softened unexpectedly. "Because in my 65 years, I've rarely witnessed such loyalty and love. It's humbling." He cleared his throat. "Besides, in our absence, you've maintained this property impeccably, while raising a remarkably intelligent and well-mannered child. That deserves recognition." The agreement they eventually reached preserved Pamela's guardianship, while providing Tina with an educational fund that would secure her academic future. The Hamiltons would return to Europe, but this time with the cottage officially deeded to Pamela and with a commitment to maintain regular communication regarding the property and Tina's progress. As they left the main house, the fog had lifted, revealing a coastline bathed in golden afternoon light. Tina squeezed Pamela's hand. "We did it. We're staying together." "We are," Pamela confirmed, emotion making her voice rough. "Always. Always is a long time," Tina observed, with the practical wisdom that sometimes made her seem far older than her 11 years. Pamela smiled. "Not nearly long enough when you love someone." Have you ever witnessed a relationship built on unconditional love like Pamela and Tina's? Or known someone who sacrificed greatly for a child who wasn't biologically theirs? Share your experiences in the comments below. The years that followed brought a new stability to their lives. The cottage was renovated properly. No more leaking roof or temperamental plumbing. Tina continued to excel at Westridge Academy, her academic achievements accumulating like treasures. Pamela was able to reduce her workload to just the estate caretaking and her weekend market stall, giving her more time to attend Tina's school events and science fairs. On Tina's 13th birthday, they planted a garden around the cottage. Herbs, vegetables, and Pamela's favorite roses. As they worked the soil together, Tina peppered Pamela with questions about her own childhood, hungry to connect more deeply with the woman who had chosen to be her mother. "Did your parents garden too?" she asked, carefully placing a tomato seedling in the prepared soil. Pamela nodded, memories warming her voice. "My mother could make anything grow. She said plants respond to love just like people do." She demonstrated the proper way to firm the soil around the delicate stem. "My father built her raised beds so she could still garden after her arthritis got bad. I remember him carrying her outside on the worst days just so she could sit among her flowers." "You never talk much about them," Tina observed. "I wish I could have known them." "They would have adored you," Pamela assured her. "Especially my father. He loved puzzles and mathematics. You remind me of him sometimes, the way your mind works." "Tell me more," Tina urged, settling back on her heels, her gardening momentarily forgotten. "About your childhood, about them." Pamela's hands stilled in the earth. "There isn't much to tell. They died when I was very young, a car accident. I was raised by my aunt, who was strict. Not unkind exactly, but not affectionate. She did her duty, nothing more." She glanced at Tina with a small smile. Perhaps that's why I understood from the beginning that being family isn't about obligation. It's about choice. That evening, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon, Tina presented Pamela with a small wrapped package. Inside was a silver locket, not the antique one Pamela had sacrificed years before, but a simpler, modern version. "Open it," Tina urged. Inside was a photograph of the two of them, taken at the Spring Tide Festival the previous year, their faces alight with laughter as they tossed flower petals into the waves. "Mr. Miller helped me save up for it," Tina explained, referring to the old fisherman who had become a beloved fixture in their lives since the running away incident. "He said everyone should have something that holds their heart." Pamela fastened it around her neck with trembling fingers. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." As Tina approached 15, her exceptional aptitude for marine biology became increasingly evident. The hours she spent with Henry Miller learning about tides, marine life, and ocean conservation had blossomed into a passionate academic interest. Her science project on local tide pools won not only the school competition, but the regional one as well, catching the attention of university researchers who offered her a summer internship at the Coastal Research Center. "It's an incredible opportunity," her science teacher enthused during a parent conference. "This program is usually reserved for college students, but they've made an exception for Tina. It could lead to scholarship offers from top universities in a few years." Pamela beamed with pride. She's always been drawn to the ocean. Even as a baby, the sound of waves would calm her immediately. "The university is hosting an information session for the program next month," the teacher continued. "Parents are strongly encouraged to attend." Pamela nodded, but as they left the school, an unexpected wave of melancholy washed over her. The future was rushing toward them, bright with promise for Tina, but tinged with bittersweet awareness. For Pamela, college would take Tina away from the cottage, away from their shared life. It was the natural order of things, the goal of parenting, to raise a child ready to leave. But the prospect still ached. "What's wrong?" Tina asked, as they walked along the coastal path toward home. "You're being quiet. Just thinking about how grown up you are," Pamela admitted. "Soon you'll be off to university, making your own way in the world." "That's still years away," Tina pointed out. "Years pass quickly, sweetheart. More quickly than you can imagine." Tina linked her arm through Pamela's. "Well, when I do go, you'll just have to visit often, or maybe come with me. They need housekeepers at universities too, don't they?" Pamela laughed, touched by Tina's assumption that they would find a way to stay connected. "We'll figure it out when the time comes." But time, it seemed, had other plans. That winter brought unusually violent storms to the coast. The cottage, though improved over the years, still stood in the path of nature's fury. During one particularly fierce gale, a massive oak branch crashed through the roof, flooding the upper floor and forcing them to evacuate to the main house, which the Hamiltons had made available in their continued absence. "It's just temporary," Pamela assured Tina as they settled into the guest wing, "until we can get the roof properly repaired." But as the days stretched into weeks, Pamela grew increasingly pale and fatigued. She dismissed Tina's concerns, attributing her exhaustion to the stress of the relocation and the extra work of coordinating repairs. In truth, she had been hiding a far more serious situation, persistent pain, and concerning symptoms she had been ignoring for months, partly out of fear, partly out of an unwillingness to burden Tina. The truth emerged when Tina, searching for additional blankets in what had become their temporary bedroom, discovered a file of medical documents Pamela had hastily hidden inside a drawer. The diagnosis was written in unflinching medical terminology: advanced renal disease requiring specialized treatment. Treatment that, even with the improved financial situation the Hamiltons had provided, remained dauntingly expensive. What will happen when roles suddenly reverse and Tina must face the possibility of losing the only mother she's ever known? Stay tuned for the emotional turning point that will test their bond like never before. That night, as rain lashed against the windows of the Hamilton mansion, Tina confronted Pamela with the medical reports clutched in her trembling hands. "How long have you known?" she demanded, her voice cracking with emotion. "Why didn't you tell me?" Pamela sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly looking every one of her 65 years. "I didn't want to worry you. You have the internship coming up, your studies." "Stop it!" Tina interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "Just stop. You don't get to decide what I should or shouldn't know about your health. We're family. We face things together." "I'm supposed to take care of you, not the other way around," Pamela protested weakly. "That's not how family works," Tina insisted, sitting beside her and taking her hands. "It's not a one-way street. It never has been." The next morning, Tina was conspicuously absent from breakfast. When she finally appeared mid-afternoon, her expression was resolute, her eyes bright with purpose, despite the shadows beneath them, indicating a sleepless night. "I've deferred the internship," she announced without preamble, "and I've taken a part-time position at the research center's administrative office. The pay isn't great, but it comes with health benefits that can be extended to legal guardians. I start next week." Pamela stared at her in horror. "You did what?" "Tina, no. Your internship is the opportunity of a lifetime." "So are you," Tina replied simply. "The internship will still be there next year, but right now you need treatment, and you need someone to care for you while you recover." "I absolutely forbid it," Pamela declared, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "You will not sacrifice your future for me, like you sacrificed yours for me," Tina challenged. "You gave up everything, your keepsakes, your privacy, your chances at an easier life, all for a baby left on a doorstep, and now you want to deny me the right to help the person I love most in the world." Their argument escalated, each woman fiercely protective of the other's future, until Pamela suddenly clutched her side, her face contorting in pain. The color drained from her features as she collapsed, Tina barely managing to catch her before she hit the floor. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but the journey to the hospital felt eternal. Tina rode in the back, clutching Pamela's limp, and promising everything would be all right, though terror gripped her heart. At 17, she suddenly faced the prospect of losing the only parent she had ever known. At the hospital, as doctors rushed Pamela into emergency care, Tina paced the waiting room, alternating between desperate prayers and frantic calls to the Hamiltons in Europe, to Ursula Vincent, to Henry Miller, anyone who might help, anyone who might care. A nurse approached her during the third hour of waiting, her expression kind. "Are you Tina? Pamela's daughter?" "Yes," Tina answered without hesitation. "How is she?" "Stabilized for now. The doctor will speak with you soon about long-term treatment options." The nurse studied her face with curious intensity. "You know, it's remarkable. You have her eyes." Tina blinked in confusion. "That's not possible. We're not biologically related. She found me abandoned as a baby." The nurse frowned slightly. "That's strange. The resemblance is striking, especially around the eyes and mouth. I actually thought you were her biological daughter." The casual observation planted a seed that would grow in the hours that followed, as Tina sat by Pamela's bedside, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. Could it be mere coincidence, this resemblance a stranger had noticed? Or was there more to the story of her origins than even Pamela knew? When Pamela regained consciousness, weak but alert, Tina broached the subject hesitantly. "A nurse mentioned something strange earlier. She thought we looked alike, that we had the same eyes." Pamela's gaze flickered with something unreadable. "People often see what they expect to see in families." "But we're not biologically related," Tina pressed gently. "Unless, is there something you haven't told me?" Something about where I came from. Tina, I've told you everything I know, Pamela assured her. You were left at the Hamiltons' doorstep that rainy February morning. There was no note, no identification, nothing. But the seed of curiosity had taken root. During Pamela's recovery, as they navigated the complexities of her treatment plan, Tina began a quiet investigation into her origins. She started with public records, searching birth announcements from around the time she would have been born, then adoption filings, missing persons reports, anything that might provide a clue. The breakthrough came unexpectedly through a routine blood test. As part of establishing Pamela's treatment protocol, doctors had requested genetic information from both women to rule out hereditary factors. The lab technician, puzzled by the results, requested a more comprehensive analysis. "There's a genetic marker here that's unusual," the genetic counselor explained when the results came back. "It appears in both your samples, which suggests a familial relationship, not mother-daughter, but there is a significant genetic overlap." Tina's heart raced. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you and Ms. Donovan are almost certainly related. The pattern suggests a first-degree relationship. Once removed, such as an aunt and niece." The revelation stunned them both into silence. Pamela, still weak from her recent treatments, seemed to age years in seconds as the implications settled over her. "I don't understand," Tina whispered finally. "How is this possible?" Further testing in the following days confirmed the genetic connection, but it was an elderly hospital volunteer who provided the final piece of the puzzle. Overhearing Tina discussing the situation with a nurse, she approached tentatively. "I couldn't help overhearing," the woman apologized. "But did you say your guardian is Pamela Donovan from the coastal town?" Tina nodded, instantly alert. "Yes. Do you know her?" "Not personally, but I remember the gossip years ago. Pamela had a younger sister, Vanessa, I think her name was. Caused quite a scandal when she ran off with some musician. Must be 30 years ago now. Their aunt was furious, disowned her completely. Poor Pamela was heartbroken. They were very close from what I heard." A sister? Pamela had never mentioned a sister. That evening, Tina confronted Pamela with this new information. "Why didn't you tell me you had a sister?" Pamela's eyes filled with tears. "Vanessa left when I was 24. She was barely 18, headstrong and rebellious. Our aunt threatened to cut her off if she didn't end her relationship with a local musician who had, in our aunt's words, no prospects and fewer morals. Vanessa chose love over family security." Her voice grew distant with memory. "I begged her not to go, but she said she had to follow her heart. The last thing she said to me was that she'd write when they were settled somewhere. That letter never came." "And you never looked for her?" "Of course I did," Pamela said softly. "For years. But this was before the internet made finding people easier. She'd changed her name when she married. It was like she'd vanished completely." Tina leaned forward, her heart pounding. "The genetic, and tests show we're related. I think I might be your sister's granddaughter. My mother would be your niece." The realization dawned in Pamela's eyes, a mixture of shock, wonder, and a profound new understanding. "All this time," she whispered, "all this time you were family by blood as well as by love. My mother must have known you worked at the Hamiltons' estate," Tina reasoned, the pieces falling into place. "She left me there hoping you'd find me." "She knew I couldn't have children of my own," Pamela added, remembering her sister's knowledge of the illness that had left her infertile. "She must have been desperate to leave you, but wanted to be sure you'd be loved." The implications of this revelation rippled through their lives in the weeks that followed. With the help of the hospital's social services department and the genetic information now available, they were able to trace Vanessa's journey after leaving town, her marriage to the musician, their peripatetic life following his gigs across the country, the birth of a daughter named Quinn, who would be Tina's mother. Quinn, who had arrived back in San Francisco 17 years ago, pregnant and alone after her parents died in a house fire. Quinn, who had left her newborn at the mansion where her mother's sister worked, unable to care for a child, while grief-stricken and destitute. The search for Quinn took on new urgency as Pamela recovered her strength. Was she still alive? Would she want to know her daughter? Would she regret her decision? The answers came in the form of a registered letter from the Hamiltons, who had returned unexpectedly to the estate while Pamela was still in the hospital. Inside was a formal document outlining their intention to convert the mansion into a marine research foundation, inspired in part by Tina's academic focus and in part by new environmental priorities in their business ventures. But more significantly, the letter contained information about a woman who had contacted them months earlier, a woman named Quinn Marshall, seeking information about a baby she had left at their estate 17 years before. The Hamiltons, respecting Pamela and Tina's privacy, had not disclosed details, but had kept the woman's contact information should it ever be needed. "She's been looking for me," Tina whispered, staring at the phone number and address, just 2 cities away, with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "All this time, she's been wondering what happened to me." Pamela took her hand. "We'll contact her together, if that's what you want. But Tina, no matter what happens next, nothing changes between us. You're my daughter in all the ways that truly matter." Tina squeezed her hand in response. "And you're my mother. Learning about Quinn doesn't change that. It just expands our story. What revelation awaits as 3 generations of women, separated by circumstance, finally come face to face? Stay tuned for the emotional reunion that will redefine the meaning of family forever." The cafe where they arranged to meet Quinn was neutral territory, a small, quiet place halfway between San Francisco and the town where Quinn now lived. Tina had insisted that Pamela come with her, unwilling to face this momentous meeting alone. They arrived early, securing a corner table with a view of the entrance. Pamela, still moving carefully after her hospitalization, settled with a cup of tea, while Tina paced nervously, straightening her sweater, checking her watch, rehearsing what she might say to the woman who had given her life but had never raised her. "What if she's disappointed?" Tina whispered, pausing at the window. "What if I'm not what she expected? Or what if I don't like her? What if—" "Tina," Pamela interrupted gently, "take a breath. Whatever happens today, we face it together, just like we always have." The door chimed, and a woman entered, slender, dark-haired, with features that struck Tina like looking into a mirror, advanced by 20 years. Quinn Marshall stood uncertainly at the entrance, her eyes scanning the cafe until they found Tina. Recognition was instantaneous and mutual, a jolt of connection that transcended the years of separation. Quinn approached slowly, as if afraid they might disappear. Her hands trembled at her sides. "Tina?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the cafe's ambient noise. Tina nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Quinn's gaze shifted to Pamela, and her composure cracked. "Aunt Pamela," she whispered, and then she was weeping, decades of loss and regret and hope colliding in that moment of recognition. The initial conversation was awkward, fragmented by emotion. Quinn explained how she had returned to San Francisco pregnant and alone after losing her parents, how she had remembered her mother speaking of an aunt who worked for a wealthy family, how she had made inquiries and discovered where Pamela was employed. "I watched the house for days," she admitted, "trying to work up the courage to approach you directly. But I was so lost, so broken. I was living in my car, working odd jobs that barely fed me. I knew I couldn't provide for a baby." Her eyes met Tina's, pleading for understanding. "I left you where I knew Aunt Pamela would find you. I knew from my mother's stories that she had always wanted children. I hoped, I prayed she would take you in." "Why didn't you leave a note?" Pamela asked, the question that had haunted her for 17 years. Something to explain who Tina was? Quinn dropped her gaze to her untouched coffee. "I was afraid. Afraid you might feel obligated, rather than choosing freely. Afraid you might try to find me before I was ready to be found." She looked up at Tina again. "But I never stopped thinking about you, never stopped wondering. When I finally got my life together, went back to school, got married, established a career, I started searching. It took years to trace you." Tina absorbed this information, silently, her emotions too complex to untangle in the moment. Here was her biological mother, a stranger with her eyes and mouth, a woman who had made the heartbreaking choice to give her away. "Are you angry with me?" Quinn asked hesitantly when Tina remained quiet. "No," Tina answered honestly, "not angry. I just don't know how to feel yet. You're my biological mother, but Pamela is my mum. She's the one who raised me, who loved me every day." Quinn nodded, tears welling again. "Of course she is. I never expected to replace her. I just wanted to know you were safe, to explain why I made the choice I did, and maybe, if you're willing, to have some place in your life." By the end of that first meeting, they had established a tentative foundation. Quinn was now an environmental lawyer, married to a kind man named Marcus, who had adopted her 2 younger children, Tina's half-siblings, ages 5 and 7. They lived in a modest home in Oakland, where Quinn had built the stable life she hadn't been able to provide for Tina. "They know about you," Quinn assured Tina. "I've always told them they have a big sister out in the world somewhere. They'd love to meet you when you're ready." As they parted, Quinn hesitated, clearly wanting to embrace Tina, but uncertain of her welcome. It was Tina who made the first move, stepping forward to offer a brief, awkward hug. "This is a lot to process," she said honestly, "but I'd like to get to know you, all of you." The drive home was quiet, both Tina and Pamela lost in their own thoughts. It was nearly sunset when they reached the cottage, which had been partially repaired during Pamela's hospitalization. They sat on the porch swing, watching gold and crimson streaks paint the sky over the Pacific. "Are you okay?" Pamela finally asked. Tina leaned her head against Pamela's shoulder, a gesture unchanged since childhood. "I think so. It's just overwhelming to suddenly have this whole other family." "They seem like good people," Pamela offered. "Quinn has clearly worked hard to create a better life." "She has your determination," Tina observed. "Must run in the family." Pamela smiled at that. "Perhaps. But Tina, I want you to know that whatever relationship you develop with Quinn and her family, it doesn't threaten what we have. You have enough love for all of us." "I know," Tina said softly. "But what about you? How do you feel about finding your sister's daughter after all this time? About sharing me?" Pamela was quiet for a long moment, considering. "When Vanessa left, it broke my heart. She was the only family I had left who truly loved me. Finding Quinn feels like recovering a piece of her, a connection I thought was lost forever." She turned to meet Tina's gaze. "As for sharing, I've always known this day would come in one form or another. Children grow up, they build their own lives, their own connections. My job was never to keep you. It was to raise you to be strong enough to go where your heart leads." The weeks that followed brought gradual integration between their once separate lives. Quinn and her family visited the cottage for Sunday lunches. Tina spent occasional weekends in Oakland, getting to know her half-siblings, who regarded her with awe-struck admiration. Marcus, Quinn's husband, proved to be a gentle, thoughtful man who welcomed Tina without reservation. Meanwhile, the Hamiltons' plans for converting the mansion into a research facility progressed rapidly. They offered Pamela a permanent position as facilities manager, a role that acknowledged her years of faithful service while accommodating her health needs, and extended a future research associate position to Tina after she completed her education. Most surprisingly, they proposed converting part of the property into residential space for key personnel, including a renovated cottage for Pamela and eventually Tina, and a family apartment that could accommodate Quinn's family during extended visits or research sabbaticals. "They're trying to make amends," Pamela observed after reviewing the proposal, "for offering to buy you all those years ago." "Maybe," Tina agreed. "Or maybe they've finally learned what we've known all along, that family isn't about blood or wealth or status. It's about belonging." The annual Spring Tide Festival arrived just as Pamela completed her treatment course. Her prognosis was cautiously optimistic, though she would need ongoing medical care. The entire extended family gathered for the celebration. Pamela and Tina, Quinn and Marcus with the children. Even Henry Miller and Ursula Vincent, who at 92 insisted on being wheeled to the shoreline for the flower ceremony. Many of the same townspeople who had once gossiped about the maid raising an abandoned child now watched with newfound respect as 3 generations of women, Pamela, Quinn, and Tina, stood together at the water's edge. Their hands joined as they cast flower petals onto the incoming tide. Mayor Thompson approached them after the ceremony, his official chain of office glinting in the spring sunshine. "Miss Donovan," he addressed Pamela formally, "the town council has voted unanimously to honor you at this year's Founders' Day celebration. Your dedication to raising Tina, despite the unconventional circumstances, exemplifies our community's highest values of compassion and perseverance." Pamela blinked in surprise. "That's very kind, but hardly necessary." "On the contrary," the mayor insisted, "your story, or should I say, your family's story, has inspired many in our town to reconsider their assumptions about what makes a family. We'd be honored if you would accept." As the mayor moved on to greet other attendees, Quinn squeezed Pamela's hand. "He's right, you know. What you did for Tina, what you did for me, without even knowing it, was extraordinary." "I only did what anyone would do," Pamela demurred. "No," Quinn corrected gently. "You did what only you would do. You opened your heart when others would have closed theirs. You created family where others saw only obligation." That evening, as twilight settled over the coast, Tina led Pamela to a spot on the bluffs overlooking the ocean. Quinn followed, a few steps behind, carrying something carefully wrapped in cloth. "We have something to show you," Tina announced, taking a small telescope from Quinn and setting it up on a tripod. "Henry helped me calibrate it exactly right." She adjusted the instrument, then stepped back, inviting Pamela to look through the eyepiece. "See that cluster of stars, just to the right of the brighter one?" Pamela peered through the telescope, following Tina's directions until she found the indicated formation. "The International Astronomical Union approved it last week," Tina explained, her voice vibrating with excitement. "It's officially named Donovan Marshall, after us, our family." Pamela straightened, overwhelmed. "You named a star?" "Actually, it's a binary star system," Quinn clarified, unfolding the cloth to reveal an official certificate. "2 stars orbiting each other, forming a single system. We thought it was appropriate." Pamela looked from Quinn to Tina, these 2 women who carried her blood and her heart in different but equally precious ways. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Tina assured her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Just know that no matter where life takes any of us, we'll always have this connection. Like those stars, separate but bound together, forming something beautiful that will shine long after we're gone." As they stood together under the vast canopy of stars, Pamela reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a baby's cry on a rainy morning. From abandonment to reunion, from isolation to connection, from judgment to acceptance, their story had come full circle, transforming not only their own lives, but touching countless others along the way. The coastal wind carried the scent of salt and possibility as 3 generations of women, once strangers, now family, gazed upward at the stars that bore their shared name. In that moment, Pamela understood with perfect clarity that family was neither defined by blood alone nor by circumstance, but by the daily choice to love without condition, to support without judgment, and to believe in one another's worth beyond measure. Family is created through love, she whispered, echoing the wisdom she had always known in her heart. Not merely blood. Tina and Quinn nodded in silent agreement, their hands finding Pamela's between them as they stood unified against the vastness of the universe. 3 women whose unexpected connection had created a legacy of love that would inspire generations to come. Congratulations. Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.